time being, it's impossible for me to take my family back to the UK safely. Well, for a start, the only time that I've come back to the UK is...
Britain had prepared for ceremony, discipline, and the familiar distance between two royal brothers. What happened instead shattered every expectation. Before cameras, veterans, courtiers, and a watching nation, Prince William stepped away from his assigned position, walked directly toward Harry, and extended a hand containing something deeply personal. The crowd fell silent. Harry stopped breathing for a moment. Then William made a declaration so unexpected that even the palace appeared completely unprepared. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Westminster Abbey held its breath as the national service of remembrance ended. The ceremony, a formal gathering honoring those who served and died in war, had been arranged with precision. King Charles sat among royals, Catherine remained calm beside William, and veterans watched. Harry had been allowed to attend privately, but he carried no official role, no place in the senior procession, and no promise of recognition. Harry had arrived alone and taken his seat far from his brother. William entered separately, never turning toward him. That distance reflected years of anger, wounds, and conversations that had never happened. Harry kept his face controlled, yet his shoulders remained rigid. William looked composed, but Catherine noticed the tension in his hands. Then the service ended. William stepped out of the senior royal line and crossed the aisle. Charles watched him move. Camilla did not move. The future king stopped before Harry and revealed a sealed envelope marked in Diana's familiar handwriting. It was a letter written by their mother and preserved among family papers. Harry stared at it as though the room had disappeared. His lips parted, but nothing came. William placed the envelope into his palm and closed his fingers around it, refusing to let fear make him pull away. "Their mother's legacy belongs to both of us," William said, keeping his voice steady. "It cannot be protected through permanent separation." Harry whispered his brother's name. Nothing else followed. William invited him to stand beside him during the Veterans Tribute and announced that they would support a program for former service members and bereaved families, inspired by Diana's private charitable wishes. The offer did not restore royal duties. It restored purpose. A senior courtier lowered his program and turned toward an aide. The gesture had not appeared in the final schedule issued that morning. Charles remained silent. Camilla's expression hardened. The nation saw compassion. The palace saw a shift in control. Harry may have been rendered speechless before the nation, but behind William's gesture lay a private calculation, and every person standing in that abbey had something different to lose. The applause outside Westminster Abbey suggested that an old wound had finally begun to close. Inside the royal family, however, the moment carried a far more dangerous meaning. William had not simply welcomed back a brother. He had taken an emotional risk as heir to the throne, challenged years of royal strategy, and placed Harry beside him under the eyes of the crown. For both men, one silent gesture reopened memories they had spent years trying to survive. William understood the cost before he ever crossed that aisle. As the future king, he knew that even a personal act of forgiveness could be treated as royal policy, meaning a decision that might shape how the monarchy dealt with Harry from that day forward. The prince was not only acting as a brother, he was carrying the expectations of a crown that demanded control, caution, and distance. Harry had entered the service expecting almost nothing. He had prepared himself for polite silence, a distant seat, and the painful role of family member without public duty. He had even told an attendant that he planned to leave as soon as the ceremony ended. The younger brother feared rejection, but he feared something else even more: being offered warmth for the cameras and coldness once the doors closed. William had wrestled with that same fear in private. Before entering the abbey, he paused beside an antechamber door, a small private room used before formal ceremonies. Alone, he reread one line from Diana's letter and folded the page carefully. Once he walked toward Harry, there would be no way to pretend the gesture meant nothing. Catherine knew what he planned. The princess had told him that crossing the aisle would only matter if the offer was real, lasting, and free from palace performance. She watched him now with quiet concern, because she understood how deeply the decision had exposed him. Charles knew only part of the plan. The king had agreed that Diana's letter should finally be returned, but he believed the handover would happen privately. He had no idea William intended to make the moment public or connect Harry to a national charitable role. As the monarch watched his sons stand together, relief crossed his face. So did something harder. William had taken control of a crisis his father had failed to solve. Camilla felt the balance shift immediately. The queen consort understood that Diana's memory had suddenly become the moral force behind the future king's choice. She remained still, but her silence carried unease. Catherine touched William's sleeve as the family prepared to leave. He gave the smallest nod. Across the aisle, Harry still held the unopened letter with both hands. His silence was not gratitude alone. He recognized that envelope because he had asked for it before, and someone had refused to release it. The letter had not appeared by accident, and Harry's recognition of it pointed directly toward the private incident that had pushed William beyond caution. Weeks before the nation watched William approach his brother, another encounter had unfolded without cameras, applause, or ceremonial music. It lasted less than 15 minutes, but it changed the direction of the royal family. Harry had arrived carrying no demands for titles, money, or public status. He asked for one private object connected to Diana. The answer he received, and William's discovery of how that answer had been delivered, became the point of no return. Diana had written separate messages for both sons during the final years of her life. William had received his copy earlier, while Harry's remained among protected family papers, meaning personal documents kept under palace control. To Harry, the matter was painfully simple. The letter had been written by his mother, for him. It did not belong to an office, a committee, or the crown. Harry made the request during a private visit to Britain. He entered Clarence's house expecting a quiet handover and left carrying nothing. A senior palace secretary placed a sealed archival box on the table, then refused to open it. The official told him access would remain suspended until his relationship with the monarchy was judged sufficiently stable. Harry did not raise his voice. That made the moment worse. He pushed his chair back, stared at the unopened box, and said even his mother's words had been turned into a test of obedience. The secretary repeated the decision. Harry looked at the box one last time, then walked out without shaking the man's hand. Catherine learned what happened before William did. Later that evening, she told him during a private conversation that Harry had left visibly shaken and had refused to speak to anyone waiting outside. William immediately requested the meeting record, a written account explaining who made the decision and why. The words struck him like an accusation. William read the phrase, "in the long-term interest of the crown," twice. The crown meant the monarchy as an institution, but the document tied the refusal directly to his future reign. Someone had used his name to justify withholding a mother's letter from her son. William opened Diana's message to him and found the line he had tried to forget. She had urged both brothers never to let duty erase their bond. He read it again, then looked toward Harry's sealed envelope. The decision came quickly. William ordered the letter transferred into his personal custody and chose the Remembrance Service because both brothers understood military service, grief, and loss. A senior advisor warned that a public handover would look like royal rehabilitation. William placed the meeting record beside Diana's letter, crossed out the restriction, and wrote one word beneath it, "release." Withholding it, he replied, had already caused greater damage. William had made the decision privately, but turning it into a public gesture would force him to confront the person most afraid of what Harry's return might represent. The cameras captured the handover, but they did not capture what happened minutes later. Behind a closed door inside the Abbey complex, William and Harry stood alone for the first time in years, with no aides, no spouses, and no prepared language between them. The envelope remained unopened in Harry's hand. William expected anger. What followed was worse. His brother asked why an act of kindness had required an audience, and the future king was forced to answer, without the protection of ceremony. William led Harry into a small clergy chamber and closed the door himself. The room was normally used by church officials before formal services, but now it held two brothers carrying years of anger. He told security that no one was to enter. Harry said nothing at first. He simply placed Diana's letter on the table between them. Harry broke the silence with one question. Why had he needed to be humiliated before being treated like a son entitled to his mother's words? The younger brother did not shout, but every word landed hard. William admitted the letter should never have been withheld. Then he refused to offer an easy apology that erased everything else. William told him reconciliation could not mean pretending the interviews, accusations, and public attacks had caused no damage. Harry pushed a chair aside and accused the palace of using family love as leverage. The prince stepped closer. "The palace did not cross that aisle," he said. "I did." The words stopped Harry for a moment. William then revealed what he had found in the documented meeting record. The restriction on Diana's letter had been described as necessary for his future reign, even though he had never approved it. Someone had deliberately placed his authority behind the refusal. Harry stared at him, anger giving way to something colder. He understood that the decision had not come from one secretary alone. William made the conditions clear. The Veterans Initiative was not a restoration of titles, public funding, or unrestricted royal access. It was a personal and public commitment, built on honesty, discipline, and one rule: neither brother would attack the other through the press. Harry looked down at the envelope. His hands trembled as he finally broke the seal. He read the opening lines in silence, then sat heavily and covered his mouth. Years of anger collapsed into grief. For the first time, William stopped defending himself. Harry slid the letter across the table and pointed to one line about brothers protecting one another. William read it, but neither man could look directly at the other. Then Harry asked who had authorized the restriction. William did not answer. That silence revealed more than a name ever could. The brothers had finally spoken without barriers, yet one question remained. Who had possessed enough authority to keep Diana's letter from Harry, and why? William's gesture appeared spontaneous, but its consequences moved through the palace with ruthless speed. Advisors demanded explanations. Courtiers feared precedent. Senior figures questioned whether Harry had just been granted a path back into royal life. At the center stood William, no longer willing to let others define what protected his reign. Yet the most revealing response came from King Charles, who summoned his eldest son and placed a confidential authorization record between them, without saying a word. William understood the limits of his power. He could not restore Harry as a working royal by himself, because that role involved official duties carried out on behalf of the monarch. But the prince controlled his own charitable foundation, his future priorities, and the personal terms of his relationship with his brother. That was enough to frighten those who believed distance had become permanent policy. The palace split almost immediately. Some advisors argued that forgiveness could modernize the monarchy and prove that strength did not require cruelty. Others warned that the gesture weakened boundaries created after Harry's departure. To them, one public act of compassion looked dangerously close to a return. Charles waited in a private sitting room with the authorization record before him. The king removed his glasses, pushed the document across the table, and watched William read the signature at the bottom. The record was a formal written approval, showing who had permitted the original delay. William looked up and asked why Diana's letter had been treated like institutional property. Charles answered that the restriction was meant to prevent another private document from entering a public dispute. He had feared the contents might be revealed and used against the family. William did not soften his reply. protecting the crown, he said, could not mean denying a son his mother's final words. The accusation struck Charles in two places at once, as monarch and as father. He recoiled, then admitted he had approved a temporary suspension. Charles insisted he never intended the delay to become permanent. The king had expected the matter to be reviewed after tensions eased. Instead, palace officials had quietly expanded the order, turning caution into a loyalty condition, and using William's future reign as justification. That revelation changed the balance. William told his father that no decision would ever again be made in his name without his direct written consent. Advisors would not use the future king as cover for choices he had never approved. Charles listened in silence because he knew his son was no longer asking permission. The king reached for the authorization paper. William placed two fingers on it and said he was keeping the record until an internal review examined every personal restriction imposed on Harry through inherited palace authority. Charles slowly withdrew his hand. The power behind the decision had finally been exposed. But once William challenged the machinery surrounding the crown, the consequences began spreading far beyond one letter. By nightfall, the gesture that had lasted less than a minute had altered relationships across the royal household. Meetings were cancelled. Statements were rewritten. Advisors who had once treated Harry's exclusion as permanent were ordered to review their decisions. But the deepest fallout did not occur inside an office. It unfolded in Harry's hotel room, where Diana's letter rested open beside him, and William's unexpected offer forced him to confront a future he had stopped believing was possible. Palace communications staff rushed to prepare a restrained statement. They described the initiative as a joint act of remembrance, not a full royal return. That difference mattered. Harry would not receive public funding, resume constitutional duties, or formally represent the king. The gesture created a bridge between brothers, but it did not rebuild the old structure around them. Harry understood those boundaries, yet they did not calm him. He reread William's conditions and wondered whether accepting would pull him into another cycle of hope, scrutiny, and rejection. The offer felt sincere. That was what made it dangerous. He had learned how quickly warmth could become pressure once palace expectations began to close in. William faced pressure of his own. Senior advisors warned the prince that emotion had overtaken strategy, and that his public gesture had created confusion. He rejected that argument immediately. Strategy without humanity, he told them, had created the crisis in the first place. Charles absorbed the fallout in silence. The king watched a replay of his sons standing together as a broadcaster described William as the man who had reunited Diana's children. He turned off the television before the report ended and remained seated, knowing the praise for his eldest son also exposed his own failure. Then the first resignation arrived. The official who had expanded the restriction on Diana's letter submitted a written account admitting that William's future authority had been used to strengthen the decision. The confession confirmed that a temporary delay had become a test of loyalty without the prince's approval. Catherine called Harry privately before midnight. The princess told him William had challenged both the advisors and Charles to secure the letter's release. Her words stripped away his final suspicion that the gesture had been designed by palace publicity staff. His brother had chosen it. His brother had defended it. William's office then sent Harry a confidential proposal for the Joint Veterans Program. The document invited him to shape the work, not merely appear at its launch. It required an answer before dawn. Harry began writing a refusal. Halfway through the first sentence, he stopped and deleted it. He placed Diana's letter beside the proposal and read both again. William had opened the door, but only Harry could decide whether walking through it would heal their bond or expose them both to one final disappointment. Before sunrise, Harry sent William only 5 words: "I need to see you." There was no formal request, no palace secretary, and no negotiation over rank. The brothers met privately at Kensington Palace, while the household remained quiet. Harry brought Diana's letter. William brought nothing. For the first time, neither man arrived as a prince defending his position. They entered the room as two sons forced to decide whether their mother's final message could succeed, where years of royal intervention had failed. William arranged for Harry to enter through a secluded entrance. No aides attended, and both brothers left their phones outside the room. Kensington Palace, a royal residence where William carried out private family and official work, had rarely felt more personal. Nothing stood between them now. No briefing, no courtier, no excuse. Harry spoke first. He said he would not return to the old royal structure or pretend the years of separation had never happened. His answer was about William, not the institution. The younger brother then admitted something harder. He had almost refused the offer because accepting kindness felt more dangerous than expecting rejection. William did not defend himself. The prince acknowledged that silence had allowed other people to define their relationship. He could not repair every wound or erase the damage already done, but he could stop hiding behind procedure. That admission carried more weight than any polished apology. Harry unfolded Diana's letter and read her words aloud. She had urged both sons to remember that public duty must never destroy private loyalty. His voice broke before the final sentence. William lowered his head, knowing the warning had arrived years too late, and still just in time. William finally explained the real purpose of his gesture. He had not crossed the aisle to bring Harry under control, or force him back into royal life. He wanted to return something fear had stolen from them, the right to stand together, without pretending they agreed on everything. Harry accepted the veterans' initiative for 1 year. He set clear boundaries, and William agreed. Any disagreement would be discussed directly before it reached advisors, broadcasters, or headlines. William moved 2 chairs from opposite sides of the table and placed them beside each other. The brothers sat shoulder to shoulder while drafting their first joint statement. When Harry prepared to leave, William did not offer a formal handshake. He embraced him. Harry hesitated, then gripped the back of his brother's coat and closed his eyes. The private decision belonged to 2 brothers, but within hours, their fragile agreement would be judged by millions who had watched their division become part of Britain's national story. At exactly 4 o'clock, the image appeared across Britain. William and Harry seated beside one another, beneath a simple statement bearing both names. There was no mention of restored titles, surrendered grievances, or a perfect reunion. Instead, the brothers announced that they would jointly support veterans living with grief, injury, and family separation. Within minutes, the story overwhelmed broadcasts and front pages. Yet one public moment outside Kensington Palace captured the nation's reaction more powerfully than any official announcement. William and Harry confirmed the creation of the Diana Service Initiative, a new charitable program focused on veterans, bereaved military families, and young people affected by traumatic loss. The name carried deep meaning because it joined their mother's compassion with the brothers' shared military experience. It also gave their reunion a purpose larger than palace forgiveness. Buckingham Palace responded carefully. The royal household, meaning the official institution serving the monarch, released a statement saying King Charles welcomed the cooperation. It also stressed that Harry's constitutional status had not changed. He was not returning as a working royal. The brothers were rebuilding trust, not rewriting the entire monarchy. Public reaction divided almost at once. Some commentators praised William for showing courage without abandoning responsibility. Others accused Harry of using reconciliation to regain influence. Every kind word was tested. Every silence was examined. The agreement had survived the private room, but now it faced the pressure of a nation. Charles approved the palace statement, then read the brothers' announcement alone. The king circled the phrase, "Our mother taught us," and paused over it. He understood that Diana had become the emotional center of their renewed unity, and that her influence had achieved what royal control never could. The following morning brought the image that defined the story. A national newspaper published a full-page photograph of William closing Harry's hand around the letter. Across the top, 2 words appeared: "Brothers again." Outside Kensington Palace, an elderly veteran stepped toward the gate. He removed his medals and placed them beside a handwritten card for 2 sons who finally chose each other. Others followed, leaving flowers, military insignia, and messages of support. An evening broadcaster called the gesture the first sign that the monarchy's future might be shaped by emotional honesty rather than enforced silence. Donations overwhelmed the initiative's temporary website within hours. William watched the veteran's tribute from inside the palace. Harry stood beside him without speaking. This time, the silence between them felt protective rather than hostile. Then the message arrived. Charles wanted to see both sons together. The public had delivered its verdict through applause, headlines, flowers, and medals, but the final emotional judgment still belonged to the father, who had watched his sons divide under the weight of the crown. The final meeting did not begin with ceremony. King Charles stood beside a window as William and Harry entered together. No photographers were present. No statement had been prepared. On the table lay the authorization that had delayed Diana's letter, the brothers' new agreement, and the morning newspaper carrying their image. 3 documents represented 3 different versions of the monarchy: control, reconciliation, and public hope. Charles now had to decide which version would define his family's future. Charles asked both sons to sit beside one another. For the first time during the crisis, the king did not address William as heir or Harry as the prince who had stepped away. He spoke to them as his children. That mattered because the meeting was no longer about rank. It was about whether a father could admit that fear had helped deepen the divide between his sons. Harry understood the boundaries before anyone repeated them. He would not return to full-time royal duties, meaning the official work carried out on behalf of the monarch. William would not abandon the standards expected of the future sovereign. Their agreement was family repair, not institutional surrender. Charles finally accepted responsibility. The king admitted that fear of another public conflict had led him to approve the delay of Diana's letter. He had called it caution. Others had expanded it into punishment. The monarch lowered his voice and acknowledged that caution became cruelty the moment a private message from a mother was used as leverage. Harry answered without anger. He told his father that Diana's words would remain private. He would not release them in an interview, place them in a book, or turn them into another weapon against the family. Her message would guide the brothers, not divide them again. Charles then signed a new order, ending loyalty conditions attached to personal family possessions. The order, a formal written instruction carrying royal authority, meant that private letters and inherited belongings could never again be withheld as instruments of discipline. He also accepted the senior courtier's resignation and confirmed that William's name could not be used in future decisions without direct approval. William and Harry made no grand promise of perfect closeness. The prince accepted that trust would return slowly. His brother agreed that disagreements would be discussed directly before reaching advisors or the public. Their bond would be limited, deliberate, and real. Charles lifted the old authorization and tore it in half. The king placed the pieces on the table and told his sons that their mother would have recognized the courage it took to stand together. The gesture had not erased betrayal or restored the past. Its power came from honesty. William chose compassion without surrendering responsibility. Harry accepted reconciliation without demanding restoration. As the meeting ended, Charles watched his sons leave through the same doorway. William slowed so Harry could walk beside him, and neither brother moved ahead of the other. And to souriat. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.